times. 1 billion here, 5 billion there, and yet they want to tax us even more. Hashtag K24 This Morning. Some of the sentiments that are coming. To keep them coming in at K24 TV. You can also SMS us on 21222. Coming back on this particular part, talking about the BBI Steering Committee now validating the views. Yesterday, ANC leader was before the committee, and one thing that he was really passionate about was the post of the PM, saying that he was there before in the Grand Coalition and he saw how it worked, and he would really discourage having two centers of power. There are very many things that are in this particular report, yet it seems like the most talked about is the executive, is this position. Why are we fixated there when there are so many other issues that we should actually be looking at again?
First, I think it's great today that at least in the papers the committee has gone ahead and put an insert. I think this is the first attempt to have this thing go to the public. And I hope for once we can begin to read beyond just the politics. Again, one of the things that I find strange, that the task force itself has lost the guardianship of this project.
Who has it lost it to?
To the politicians. The politicians are the ones. Today the people won't have anything else. We are doing more politicking around it. We want to whip these people. And around these things. You know, the pronouncements of politicians, even, we got to the wrong start when we started going around and the politicians leading these rallies. There's nothing wrong with them being at the rallies. But at that time, there was a very absent position, the task force itself. And people kept on pointing out, in these rallies that are convened by politicians, they needed to take the leadership. The task force did not. So, for me, what Mudavadi is pointing out is the truth. That you cannot, we have to define, knowing that in Africa, we do not have the manners to respect each other's positions. You're going to create, Mudavadi is giving an insider's view, that in the Grand Coalition it was so difficult that even the Prime Minister and the President had their own men. By dint of their appointments, they belong to two different groups. So I think the fact that we have also taken the political trajectory in everything that we're doing. Mheshimiwa Kioni has been saying that he needs to lead a chapter on agriculture and empowerment of the youth. But you know, he's a lone voice in this political wilderness. Everybody wants to look at what can I get out of this. We seem to think that politics is everything. It's the positioning of where we get is, once I get it, my people have gotten it. Because we have put all the supporters in silos. We do not do politics on ideology. We do it because it's a personality. Right. And this is where we're getting it from.
Okay. Jero, I'll come to you as well, because now finally the BBI committee trying to at least get the copies, so to speak, to the people so that they can understand, by the time the rally comes to your particular area, what really are the issues of the day. Is this enough, too little, too late, and how do we get it back? Because as Ken says, it seems like the politicians took it, ran away with it, and everybody is playing catch-up to what's happening.
You know, and I'll keep repeating this, you know I'm not a fan or a supporter of the BBI process because I call it the Trojan horse for politics of succession. So I think the task force is doing exactly what it's meant to be doing. It didn't accidentally lose control of the process.
That was the design?
Part of the design, because if it was the Trojan horse, it has brought BBI into our living rooms, into our psyche, into our heads, our hearts, our churches, our schools, our hospitals, our matatus. It's brought BBI there. And once you open it, then what is really behind this document comes out. So even though I have read this document, and I've said this over and over again, cover to cover, and I am glad that there is this pullout, at the end of the day, it is not very useful except for some key areas that are designed to push through the succession process. And one of them is the Prime Minister position. You know, this business of the Executive Prime Minister will never pass. Because by the time, and I do agree with Honorable Musalia Mudavadi, that it is a recipe for chaos. But I don't think the idea was ever to have an executive prime minister in that regard. You will have people debate, and then they will trade off the executive prime minister debate for something else. Maybe around devolution, maybe around youth, maybe around other things. But ultimately for me, as is, the way the Prime Minister is positioned in the BBI document, this is a very powerful behind-the-scenes individual. And I always argue that that was the intention, to have an executive, public, ceremonial, powerful, visible, larger-than-life president. And then you have this humble prime minister who is drawing an MP's salary, who is running a small little office with a principal secretary who supervises all the other principal secretaries. If you look at the cabinet secretaries will now be drawn from amongst the members of parliament, with the exception of a few technocrats who will be called in, and I don't even know how that will work. So when those cabinet ministers are very busy running their affairs in their constituencies, in the House, etc., who will be running the ministries? The ministries will be run by principal secretaries, and those principal secretaries will report back to the principal secretary in the office of the Prime Minister. And that is how we shall conveyance billions, if not trillions of shillings over the next cycle, because they will be signed off. People are busy running around politicking. We're back to the Moi days. Kibaki also, but we are back to pre-2010 Constitution of Kenya. So as I see it, this executive prime minister debate is still a red herring, because the prime minister is exactly what those behind the BBI process intended it to be, a quiet mover and shaker.
Okay. Even a look at this, a couple of days ago, Punguza Mzigo Bill was relaunched as well. We're looking at a situation where they've come back, they went to the drawing board, as they said, saw where they went wrong, saw what's happening with BBI, came up with a couple of proposals on their side as well, to abolish the Senate, to abolish the deputy governor's post, increase allocation to county governments to 50% from what it is right now. Do you feel this is second time the charm for that? It might steal the thunder from what's happening with the BBI?
Well, they say third time's the charm, so we still have one more to go. Of course, I angered quite a number of people when I referred to Punguza Mzigo as being quite populist and not as well thought through as it should have. And I'm glad that they've gone back to the drawing board, and I wish them good luck. But this train called BBI left the station. In fact, if anything, I think Punguza Mzigo was a tester to see how do Kenyans respond to the issue of a potential referendum. And so I wish them well. I'm glad that there are other initiatives, so I will not stand up and say, no, this was wrong. Maybe they'll do it, maybe it'll succeed, maybe it won't. But BBI train has left the station. So even though I don't support it and I'm not a proponent, I'm also not politically naive. I understand, unless Kenyans begin to think for themselves and imagine a future different than that has been dictated to us by the elite political class, there is no alternative but to have the BBI sail through and let the chips fall where they may, and let's see. And we, as usual, will be the spectators watching to see what happens and hoping that Mtuwetu is a beneficiary of the outcome of the BBI. Yes. So it is a tragedy. It is an absolute tragedy, because I've always said there is nothing that the BBI talks about that the Constitution of Kenya hasn't effectively addressed, except this issue of returning a prime minister and a couple of other things here and there, and also rolling back the gains that devolution has made and the importance of devolution by bringing in this regional kind of back to a provincial government with then sub PCs who might be called governors. It's maybe another succession agenda for governors who know they cannot run again. So yes, there are some murky things that need to be addressed, and the Constitution needs to be changed to reflect that. But ultimately, there's nothing that we cannot resolve right now as Kenyans using the Constitution of Kenya. It's
a good thing you said that we have the chair of the CIOC with us.
Yes, and I'm glad that he will also tell
Absolutely.
Tell
because very many people have had that particular school of thought, in the sense that we haven't fully implemented what we have from 2010. Why this clamor for the BBI? Because if we had done that, we wouldn't be going around the country having these rallies, spending the money that we've spent. Let's use what we have first of all.
I think I want to join my colleagues in lauding the BBI, because finally there is something that can go to Kenyans. And many places, including churches, they have been asking, can we get a copy of the BBI report? And we now have it, and better still, we have one in English and another one in Kiswahili, so that those who cannot be able to go through it in English can do it in Kiswahili. So a very useful thing that they have done, and certainly a step in the right direction. Two is that I mentioned that I went to Germany on the invitation of the German government, and one of the reasons was because of these issues that we're having on BBI, constitutionalism, parliamentarism, devolution, and this. And let me say this, because at times there may not be somebody to say, this thing that we have called BBI, apparently and surprisingly, is a movement or an initiative that is being loudly applauded out there. The Germans cannot believe of how can a country get to do this kind of a thing, for the reason that even in their country there are issues that they would want to perhaps address, but they also don't have a formula. But and they think this is a golden opportunity for us to address many issues that they have themselves, but they also think if we have such issues in our country, a platform has been created for us to use, and we should make the best out of it. And I can say it again, they are really excited about this movement. They're even excited about the fact that two protagonists can shake hands and start moving the country in the same direction. Having said that, and I say that so that we see that even as we have problem with it within here, out there are people who think that Kenya is doing very great things in this exercise. The other thing I want to say is that I heard my colleagues complain about politicians, and I am one. It would be naive of me if I don't say something about it. I joined politics because I did not like the position they occupy of complaining about politicians, and there is nothing you'll ever do when you're out there. If you think you can offer something and you want to move it even better, one of the other bold move that you have to do is to become a politician. If you are scared of politicians and politics, then I must sympathize with you, because whichever other initiative you try, it will end up with the politics. Even the Pogusa Mzigo will still end up with the politicians, because the politicians that we have, we hate them once we have them in office, but they are elected by Kenyans to go into those offices and represent them. As to whether they do it, that's another question. But there is always that question of saying, tuliwachagua. Like last night somebody told me, that is why we elected you. Push these guys for us. And it's true. So there is, you cannot wish them away. And I think the sooner we try to use them, the better. Because condemning them when they are already in office, is like also condemning half of yourself. Now, BBI is here, and I sat through this presentation by ANC yesterday at the BBI. And I must say what BBI are doing is, this validation exercise is two ways. You're validating the document that they already have by checking whether what you told them is contained in their document. But you're also coming with the document that you actually presented, and you're also validating what you said. There is room, of course, to perhaps say a few new things. But I saw like that window is not that big. It's a very small window for you to introduce anything new outside what is already contained in the BBI. And again, as you have mentioned, because politics is more juicier than anything else, they have picked on one nice aspect of the report, and that's the Prime Minister, because the Prime Minister, the former Deputy Prime Minister addressed this issue in his report. But if you look at what the BBI report has said, actually what he said, he agreed with the recommendation of the BBI, that the Prime Minister will be appointed from Parliament and from the party that has a majority in Parliament. He will be appointed by the Prime Minister, and he will be appointed by the President, approved by Parliament, and he will be a member of Parliament. He has to have won a seat somewhere. He's not going to walk in. He has to have been elected somewhere in this country. So he will have the feeling of what are the people saying in the ground. And then that issue of the Prime Minister comes with the cabinet in Parliament, as opposed to where we are now, where we have a cabinet that is outside of Parliament. So it's a whole delivery process, which I really support. This is something I really support, and I can tell you again, this receives 100% support from within Parliament. Everybody believes we can do better when the ministers are within Parliament, because you are able to get your ideas to the people, to the government, or get the feelings of the people you represent to the government faster when they are in Parliament than when we have to go looking for them in offices. So I want to say that I have said this before, I want to repeat that in my view, there will not be many areas that will require constitutional amendment. But this is a discourse, it's a discussion that we need to have. And I remember yesterday there was a question that was put by the former AG, now Senator Amos Wako, Emeritus. And he asked a very telling question, and I was really happy with that question. He asked, if we were to agree as Kenyans and as people who have responsibility, and Kenyans, even those who were to implement the constitution as it is in the one for 2010, how much of changes are we likely to have? And even the ANC team agreed that very few changes. So there is inertia in persons in office, and this is what we are supposed to find in Parliament, the status of implementation of our constitution. If Kenyans were to agree to implement the constitution as we provided it to ourselves 2010, and if those in offices, public offices, were to do it, a lot of the issues that we are now seeing will not be affecting us. But let us agree, one of the impediments in the implementation of this constitution is the culture, is the mindset. And this engagement of BBI helps us think through why is it that we are not getting this. And we can actually see it's because of the way we feel. Like there was a question, what system, and this is what the leader of ANC was asking, Musalia Mudavadi, what is it that, how is it that we can appoint commissioners to IEBC who would then be said these are the proper ones? And how else can we do it as a country? And it has very little to do with the system that we use, but everything to do with our mindset and the way we view these people. And he gave the example of India, where they have 700 million voters with 3 commissioners who have been going through this process over the years.
Some people might ask, Honorable Kioni, is it, for example, the IBC, is it the commissioners or the problem, or the politicians? Because
it's not the politicians.
We've changed the commissioners several.
It's the Kenyans.
We've changed the commissioners from IEC to IEBC.
I want to tell you,
and we're still changing them again.
View,
but the politicians have remained constant.
I want to tell you that the problem is not the commissioners. The problem is us Kenyans, and of course led by, to some extent, by politicians. For as long as you want to explain why you lost your elections, and you lost it because that commissioner favored X. So the problem is not the politician, it is our mindset. And this is where this discussion needs to, that's why this BBI, if you go and listen to these discussions, I am wondering how will we get the Kenyans to come and understand it. For example, another narrative that is now being put out there by the people who would want to fight this BBI is that there is a third tier of government that has been proposed in the BBI. And again, yesterday it came out clear. The commissioners were able to say, that is not in our document. There must be another document out there that you are reading. We are saying the economic blocks, as they are forming themselves, they can be helped to function. But we still have only the county government as a recognized constitutional structure. Okay. So, like we are saying, it is not, it's a mindset, and this is why I like the issue of, can we then try and get another generation that has more faith in this institution? Teach it in primary school, teach it in secondary schools and the university, so that we can have a complete change of mindset. Why are people running for offices? Most of the Kenyans run for offices. Why? Because they think they are going to make money. Not because they want to go and serve. And somebody said, why are people stealing, why are our young people stealing standard 8 exams? Why is it so even parents are helping those young people to steal? Because they believe that perhaps they will become better thieves when they go, you know. The culture of stealing is no longer something we fear. It's something that is embraced by us. And this is the debate that is actually there in the BBI. And as I said before, and I want to repeat again, let us not create an impression that there is another constitution coming. Very few areas of the constitution require amendment for us to accommodate this BBI. But finally, if we have another Puguza Mzigo initiative, it's unfortunate. We cannot have a country that is perpetually amending its constitution. We now have to look at this constitution and make it difficult for every other Tom, Dick, and Harry to come up with proposals to amend the constitution. Where do we stop? The issues of constitution were started when I was a young person at the university. Now I'm an old person. I'm not a wrong student, and we are still talking about constitutional amendments. I think we need to stop it and allow the country to grow.
Okay. Let me come to Ben as well on an issue that has been touched on both on Punguza Mzigo and also in the BBI, and this is a matter of devolution. And we're coming at a point where even as you look at devolution as is right now, funding has been a key problem at the counties. Even as we talk about it right now, there's a stalemate going on. The controller of budget wants to know the casual laborers, wants all of these things. COG says that's not your function, that's the Office of the Auditor General, yet here we are wanting the services to be delivered. How do we cure this once and for all?
There's a position that I have maintained for quite a while. One thing we have to agree is that devolution in this country came in at probably at a bad time, because we have individuals in the national government who have completely and deliberately refused to transition from the previous era of government to the new dispensation of the 2010 Constitution. And it's a good thing, actually, when you look at even the BBI report we are looking at here, which has been in circulation since November last year. Even when you look at the issues they try to talk about or touch on devolution, there is really nothing new they're telling us that is outside the current constitution. But what we have is a continued demonstration of political bad manners and commitment to frustrate devolution. There are still people operating from Nairobi who believe that for people of Ndaragwa to get a dispensary, they must come begging and they must sing a particular song so that they can get a road or a clinic or a dispensary done in their region. The problem we are facing, and the problem devolution is facing, is more of a mindset than practice, because the infrastructure and the framework is in place. Unfortunately, like now, this tussle you keep seeing between the COG, you know, there is also an interesting bureaucracy that we have around the implementation of devolution. We have the Senate, we have the county governments, we have the county assemblies. Most of these actually, there are already infrastructure in place to check to create checks and balances. We have the Commission on Revenue Allocation. We have the Salaries and Remuneration Commission, still touching on devolution. We still have the control of budget on devolution. We still have opinions coming from the Treasury itself. And we still have central bank playing a role. And we still have, at the end of the day, you find it is becoming very interesting in terms of how devolution is supposed to function. And one thing we must be able to bring out very confidently is the fact that if you look at a state agency like, say, Kenya Ports Authority, or even the Central Bank, or even the Kenya Revenue Authority, they don't go through the kind of procedures we are seeing, or the kind of roadblocks that we are seeing being placed against devolution. I don't want to believe that the Ministry of Education or the Ministry of Interior or even any other ministry goes through the same hurdles that county governments have to go through. So what does that tell you? There is a bad spirit, especially within some individuals in the national government, who do not like the idea of what has become of devolution. There are people, we have seen these conversations even coming out on mainstream media, whereby they have been convinced these governors are becoming too powerful, they must be tamed. So the idea of taming these individuals is to frustrate devolution, make sure that they are barely functioning as espoused by the Constitution, so that they have to keep singing a particular national song or begging a certain individual, so that at least something can be happening in their counties. I was reading in the Business Daily yesterday a big headline splashed there that Ukur Yatani has released 151 billion shillings for counties. It's a joke. He has been writing letters actually since December indicating that he has sent money to counties, yet there is no money.
Get there.
There is no money. Go to the counties themselves. Go to their CRF accounts. Tell me how much he has been able to release.
Right.
So you see, this idea of setting up governors against the public, because you know there are people who are suffering out there because of pending bills.
Right.
When Ukur Yatani tells Kenyans that he has released 151 billion shillings, there is no way your governor, Kimemia, isn't it? There is no way Kimemia now is going to sit at peace, because the people of Nyandarua, you received money last Friday. Yet there is no money. So these kinds of theatrics actually are costing devolution and killing the actual intention of devolution. Okay. Because as a country, we have seen what devolution has done for this country. And there is something also very important that we must be able to touch on. I don't know whether now or we pick it up.
Let's take it up after the break on